Commander Connor Buxton took a deep breath as he stepped into the large, gleaming conference room on Feria Prime. Today was not just any ordinary day. It was a day that might change the course of human history. Connor was the first human to make official contact with the Ferians, a highly advanced and logical alien race. The weight of Earth's future rested on his shoulders as he walked across the room, his footsteps echoing slightly on the polished metal floor. The conference room was unlike any he had seen before. It was stark and angular, with every surface shining in metallic brilliance. The room was lit by a series of harsh, bright lights that reflected off the shiny surfaces, creating a network of glares that could be almost blinding. In the center of the room stood a large oval table, surrounded by high-backed chairs that resembled thrones more than anything else. Connor suppressed a smirk as he thought about the Ferians' love for efficiency and practicality over comfort. Seated at the far end of the table was a solitary figure, his Ferian counterpart for these crucial negotiations. She rose gracefully as he approached, her movements smooth and precise, a stark contrast to the rigid atmosphere of the room. Her name was Viceroy Azra Kin, and she represented her people with an air of calm authority. Azra was humanoid, similar in shape and size to humans, but the similarities ended there. Her skin was pale, almost translucent beige, stretched over a frame of elegant bones and taut muscles. A crest of flexible cartilage swept back from her high forehead, tapering into two slender tentacles that draped down her back like a ponytail. Her eyes were large and almond-shaped, a swirling silver color with no visible pupils, which gave her a particularly intense gaze. She wore a form-fitting bodysuit made of some shimmery black material that seemed to change colors slightly as she moved. Commander Buxton. She greeted him in flawless English, her voice cool and emotionless. I am Viceroy Azra Kin. Welcome to Feria Prime. Connor executed a perfect military bow, fist to chest. Thank you, Viceroy Kin. It's an honor to be here representing the United Earth Federation. They took their seats at opposite sides of the table, sizing each other up. Despite the formal setting, Connor couldn't help but notice how Azra's suit clung to her every curve. Get it together, Buxton, he chided himself internally. This is a diplomatic mission, not a social call. So, he began, clasping his hands together on the tabletop. Shall we get down to business? I believe we have much to discuss regarding the proposed alliance between our peoples. Azra tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. Indeed, Commander. But first, I have a query of a more personal nature, if you will indulge me. Connor's eyebrows rose in surprise. Of course. Viceroy, ask away. The Ferian leaned forward, her silver eyes boring into his. Tell me, Commander, how do humans mate? Connor nearly choked on his own saliva. I beg your pardon, he thought, utterly taken aback by her blunt inquiry. Mating, copulation, procreation, Azra clarified, her tone as matter-of-fact as if she were discussing the weather. My people reproduce through a purely technical process, a simple combining of genetic materials in a laboratory. There is no physical contact, no emotional connection. It is merely a means to an end, the continuation of our species. She paused, studying his reaction. But I have heard rumors that humans engage in mating for pleasure, that you have elaborate rituals and practices surrounding the act. I wish to understand this strange concept. Connor felt his face flush hot. Of all the topics he'd expected to discuss with an alien dignitary, the birds and the bees were definitely not on the list. He cleared his throat awkwardly. Well, you heard correctly. For humans, sex isn't just about making babies. It's also a way to express affection, to bond with a partner on a deeper level. There's an emotional and mental component to it, not just physical. Azra listened intently, her head cocked to one side. Fascinating. As the conversation moved forward, Connor found himself explaining more about human culture, emotions, and the concept of pleasure, topics he hadn't anticipated bringing up in such a setting. Yet, as he spoke, He noticed a slight softening in Ezra's gaze, a hint of curiosity that seemed to grow with each word he uttered. This first meeting, while starting on an unexpected note, was opening doors to a much deeper exchange than either had anticipated. Connor knew that the days ahead would be filled with negotiations and discussions, but now there was a new layer to explore. The challenge of bridging two vastly different cultures was daunting, yet exciting. As the meeting concluded for the day, Connor walked back to his quarters, his mind buzzing with thoughts. He chuckled to himself, shaking his head at the absurdity of being both a diplomat and, unexpectedly, an educator on human intimacy. Yet he couldn't deny the spark of intrigue that Ezra's questions had ignited. This mission was shaping up to be more interesting than he had ever imagined. A strange question about humans. The second day of negotiations dawned bright and clear on Feria Prime. Connor Buxton woke early, feeling a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Today, he would delve deeper into the details of the proposed alliance with the Ferians, focusing on trade agreements, technology exchanges, and mutual defense strategies. As he prepared for the day, his thoughts kept drifting back to Viceroy Azrakin's surprising question about human mating practices. He wondered what today's discussions would bring. Connor arrived at the conference room, finding it just as stark and shimmering as the day before. Ezra was already there, standing beside the oval table, her presence as commanding as ever. She greeted him with a nod, her expression neutral, but her eyes holding a spark of curiosity that hadn't been there before. "Good morning, Commander Buxton. I trust you are prepared for another productive day," she asked, her voice smooth and controlled. "Good morning, Viceroy Kin. Yes, I am ready. Shall we begin?" Connor replied, taking his seat and arranging his notes. They started with the easy topics, trade routes and resource sharing. Connor explained Earth's needs and what they could offer in exchange. Ezra listened, occasionally interjecting with questions or clarifying details about her planet's capabilities. As the morning progressed, Connor felt they were making good progress. However, he could sense that Ezra was leading up to something more personal, just as she had the previous day. Finally, after discussing a particularly complex trade agreement, Ezra paused and looked directly at him. "Commander, if I may divert our conversation momentarily," she began, her tone indicating that she was about to revisit the personal territory. "Yesterday, you mentioned that humans engage in mating for reasons beyond procreation. You spoke of pleasure and emotional connections. I find this concept intriguing but difficult to grasp. Could you elaborate more on this?" Connor took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Certainly, Viceroy. For humans, physical intimacy is often about connecting with another person on a deeper level. It's not just a biological act. It's a way to express feelings of love, trust, and closeness." Ezra's expression was unreadable as she digested his words. "And these feelings, love, trust, closeness, they enhance the physical experience?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Yes, they do," Connor replied. "When people care about each other, their physical experiences are often more intense and satisfying. It's not just about the body. It's about the mind and heart as well." Ezra considered this for a moment, then continued, "In our society, we view emotions as variables that can complicate decision-making processes. We strive to eliminate such disturbances in our interactions. However, your perspective suggests that these emotions can be beneficial." "That's right," Connor agreed. "Emotions can indeed complicate things, but they also enrich our lives. They make the good moments better and the hard moments bearable." "I see," Ezra said, her voice a mix of fascination and skepticism. "And could you provide an example of such an emotional and physical connection? I am trying to understand the practical application of this concept." Connor chuckled softly, realizing that no matter how much he explained, some things had to be experienced to be fully understood. "Well, it's a bit like dancing," he suggested. "When two people dance, they move together, responding to the music and to each other's movements. It's physical, yes, but it's also an emotional experience that builds connection. Dancing, Azra repeated, pondering the analogy. I am familiar with the concept, though it is not practiced. In our culture, it seems to require a harmony that we do not typically cultivate. Perhaps, Connor said, smiling, one day I could show you a simple dance. It might help illustrate what I'm trying to say. Azra looked surprised but intrigued. That would be most enlightening, she admitted. I would appreciate understanding your culture better, Commander. As the meeting wrapped up for the day, Connor felt a small victory in having piqued Azra's interest not just in human technology, but also in human culture. He knew that building a bridge between their worlds would involve more than just signing treaties. It would require understanding and respecting their differences, and perhaps, in some cases, embracing them. As they left the conference room, Connor couldn't help but feel that the negotiations were about to take a very interesting turn. Azra's questions had opened up a new level of dialogue, one that went beyond mere diplomacy and ventured into the realm of cultural exchange. He looked forward to what the next day would bring, knowing that each conversation brought them a step closer not just to an alliance, but to a mutual understanding that could benefit both their peoples. Sharing the secrets of the heart. On the third day of negotiations, the atmosphere in the conference room on Feria Prime seemed subtly different. Commander Connor Boxton noticed a slight change in Viceroy Azra Kin's demeanor as she greeted him that morning. There was a hint of openness, a softening in the eyes that suggested her curiosity about human emotions was not just professional, but personal too. As they settled into their chairs, Azra wasted no time. Commander Boxton, yesterday you mentioned the concept of dancing as a metaphor for emotional and physical connection. I have been contemplating this analogy. Could you perhaps expand on other human activities that involve emotions? Connor nodded, pleased with her interest. Of course, Viceroy. Another good example would be our celebrations, like weddings or birthdays. These events are filled with joy and often involve rituals and activities that strengthen bonds between people. Azra leaned forward, intrigued. And these rituals, are they also meant to enhance emotional connections? Yes, exactly, Connor explained. Take weddings, for instance. This ceremony is a celebration of the union between two people who promise to share their lives together. It's filled with customs that symbolize love, commitment, and partnership. Guests at the wedding share in the couple's happiness, and it's a way to publicly honor the emotional journey of the couple. Azra pondered this. It seems your society places a significant value on shared experiences and emotional expressions. In contrast, Ferian ceremonies are primarily about reinforcing societal roles and responsibilities. They are formal and structured, with little room for emotional expression. That's an interesting contrast, Connor said. Emotions play a big role in human interactions. They can complicate things, as you've said, but they also make our lives richer. They give color to what might otherwise be a monochromatic existence. I find it challenging to see emotions in such a positive light, Azra confessed. Our culture teaches us to control and suppress emotional responses to maintain clarity and logic in all decisions. Connor nodded understandingly. It's a common belief that emotions cloud judgment, and that can be true. But they also provide depth and meaning to our choices. For example, love can inspire a person to become better, to strive harder, and to care deeply for others' well-being. Azra seemed to consider his words carefully. You speak of love frequently. Is it considered a fundamental aspect of human life? It is, Connor confirmed. Love can take many forms. Romantic, familial, friendship. It's a powerful force that drives much of our behavior. It's why people might sacrifice their own needs for someone else, why they celebrate each other's successes, and support each other in difficult times. The Viceroy's expression showed a flicker of realization. Is this why your people are so resilient? Because they draw strength from emotional connections. That's part of it, Connor agreed. Our connections give us something to fight for, something more than just survival. They help us endure hardships and work together towards common goals. Ezra was quiet for a moment, then spoke with a hesitance that was rare for her. Could it be possible, then, that my people are missing something critical by dismissing emotions? Connor chose his words carefully. Perhaps it's not for me to say what's right for the Furians, but from a human perspective, embracing emotions doesn't just make us stronger, it makes us more complete. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. Ezra nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting a mix of contemplation and wonder. This discussion has been very enlightening, Commander. I will need to reflect on these ideas further. As the meeting ended, Connor felt they had reached a new level of understanding. Ezra's questions had moved from the theoretical to the personal, showing that she was truly trying to grasp the human experience. It was a breakthrough, not just in their diplomatic relations, but in how they saw each other as representatives of their respective cultures. As Connor left the conference room, he couldn't help but feel optimistic about the days ahead. Sharing human emotions and cultural practices was proving to be an unexpected but rewarding aspect of his mission. He looked forward to continuing these discussions, hoping they would lead to a deeper alliance built not just on mutual interests, but on mutual understanding. A lesson in human touch. The fourth day of negotiations at Feria Prime opened with a lighter atmosphere than the previous sessions. Commander Connor Buxton noticed a change in the conference room as he entered. There was a palpable sense of curiosity and anticipation, particularly from Viceroy Ozrakin. Today, they had agreed to shift from theoretical discussions to more practical demonstrations of human emotions and behaviors. As they settled into their seats, Ezra's gaze was thoughtful, almost introspective. Commander Buxton, you have described various human emotions and their significance extensively, she began. Today, I am prepared to observe these concepts in a more practical setting. You suggested demonstrating a dance. Is this still agreeable? Connor nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and responsibility. Yes, Viceroy. I believe it could be very enlightening. Shall we begin with something simple, a basic dance that many humans learn at a young age? Ezra agreed, and they moved to a clearer area of the room. Connor instructed her on where to place her hands, and he carefully positioned his own. The key to dancing, he explained, is not just the steps themselves, but how you connect with your dance partner. It's about feeling the music and each other's movements. As the music started, a soft, melodious tune that Connor had selected for its gentle rhythm, they began to move. Initially, Ezra was stiff, her movements slightly awkward as she tried to mimic Connor's steps. However, as he led her gently, offering encouraging smiles and gentle corrections, she began to relax. This is quite different from any Farian practice, Ezra remarked as they swayed together. I can feel the music, and your guidance makes the steps clearer. There is a harmony in this that I did not anticipate. Connor smiled, pleased with her response. That's exactly right. Dancing can be a joyful experience because it combines music, movement, and partnership into a single harmonious activity. It's not just about following steps, it's about experiencing them together. As they continued, Connor could see Ezra becoming more involved in the dance, her earlier hesitation giving way to a cautious enjoyment. When the song ended, there was a brief moment of silence before Ezra spoke. I understand now why humans might find pleasure in such activities. There is a form of communication here that goes beyond words. Encouraged by her insight, Connor suggested they take the lesson further. There's another human gesture of affection that might interest you, he said. It's called a hug. It's a way we express care, comfort, or happiness. Ezra looked intrigued, but slightly apprehensive. A hug, she repeated. Is it appropriate to demonstrate? With your permission, Connor said respectfully. Ezra nodded, and Connor showed her how to hug. He explained the importance of the embrace among friends and family in human culture as they cautiously entered the hug. Initially rigid, Ezra slowly relaxed, and for a moment, Connor felt her return the pressure of his embrace. Stepping back, Ezra was thoughtful. That was more profound than I expected. I felt a warmth, a security. That's exactly the purpose, Connor explained. It's about sharing warmth and support. For many humans, physical touch can be as significant as words. The remainder of their session explored more about human expressions of affection, discussing their psychological impacts and cultural significance. Ezra listened intently, her demeanor a mix of professional curiosity and personal intrigue. As the day concluded, both Connor and Ezra were contemplative. They had crossed a bridge not just of interstellar diplomacy, but of interpersonal understanding. Connor felt they were on the verge of not only forging a new alliance, but also introducing a new perspective to Ezra, and through her, potentially to the Farian people. "This has been a most enlightening day, Commander," Ezra said as they prepared to leave the room. "Your culture's integration of emotion and physical expression is complex but profoundly beautiful." Connor nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "Thank you, Viceroy. I'm glad to have the opportunity to share this with you. It's been enlightening for me as well to see these aspects of my culture through your eyes." As they parted ways, Connor sensed that the next and final day of their negotiations would bring new depth to their discussions. They had started as representatives of their respective peoples, but were now approaching the boundary of friendship, a testament to the power of sharing and understanding across cultures. New feelings and a new start. On the final day of his diplomatic mission on Feria Prime, Commander Connor Buxton felt a mixture of satisfaction and nostalgia. The past days had not only been about forging alliances, but also about bridging two vastly different cultures through shared experiences. As he prepared for the last meeting with Viceroy Ezra Kin, he sensed that the conclusion of their talks would mark the beginning of something new and profound. As Connor entered the conference room, he noticed that the setup had been slightly altered. Instead of the usual stark, utilitarian style, there were softer lights and the chairs were arranged less formally. It seemed Ezra had taken some of their discussions to heart, attempting to create a warmer atmosphere. "Good morning, Commander," Ezra greeted, her tone more open than he had ever heard before. "I have given much thought to our previous conversations. Today, I would like to discuss not just the formal treaty, but also how we might continue the exchange of cultural insights." Connor was pleased. "Good morning, Viceroy. I'm glad to hear that. I believe these cultural exchanges can strengthen the bond between our people even more than any treaty." They settled into the chairs, and Ezra began by reflecting on what she had learned. "Your demonstrations of human emotions and interactions have been quite enlightening," she said. "I find myself reconsidering many preconceived notions about the role of emotions in logical decision-making." Connor listened intently, nodding. "Emotions can indeed enrich our lives and decisions," he responded. "They bring a layer of depth that pure logic might miss. I'm happy to see you found our discussions valuable." Ezra then proposed an idea that took Connor by surprise. "I would like to suggest setting up a cultural exchange program," she proposed. "We could send Farians to Earth to experience your culture firsthand, and perhaps you could send human representatives here. I believe experiencing each other's worlds directly could foster greater understanding and cooperation." Connor was impressed by her initiative. "That's an excellent idea, Viceroy. Experiencing a culture firsthand can be incredibly impactful. We would be honored to host Farian visitors and equally excited to learn more about Feria Prime through our own representatives." The discussion moved to the specifics of the treaty and the details of the exchange program. They talked about the logistics, the legal frameworks, and how they would ensure that both sides benefited equally from the arrangement. As they talked, Connor felt a sense of camaraderie with Ezra that had been absent at the start of their negotiations. As the meeting drew to a close, they both stood and Ezra extended her hand, a gesture that Connor knew was not typical for Farians, who usually preferred bows or nods. He took her hand, and they shook, a human gesture that symbolized their newfound mutual respect and friendship. "Commander Buxton, I must admit that when we began these talks, I did not expect to find such value in human emotions. Ezra confessed. You have opened my eyes to a different way of experiencing the world. Connor smiled warmly. And you, Viceroy Kin, have shown me the strength in Firian logic and order. I think both our peoples can learn a great deal from each other. They agreed to meet again, not just as diplomatic representatives, but as partners in what they both hoped would be a long and fruitful exchange of ideas, cultures, and friendship. The treaty was signed with a sense of achievement and a promise of future collaboration. As Connor left the conference room for the last time, he looked back at Azra, who was still standing there, a thoughtful expression on her face. He knew that the mission had been a success not just in terms of political and economic gains, but in making a real human connection with someone who had once seemed so fundamentally different. The journey back to Earth would give him plenty of time to reflect on the lessons learned and the friendships forged. He was eager to share his experiences with his colleagues and to prepare for the arrival of the first Firian visitors. The mission had taught him that diplomacy was not just about treaties and agreements, but about understanding and connecting on a human level, no matter how different the cultures might be. This understanding would guide him in all his future missions, forever shaping his approach to diplomacy. As the spaceship left Firia Prime's orbit, Connor looked out at the stars, contemplating the vastness of space and the infinite possibilities it held for friendships, for learning, and for peace. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter now, each one a beacon of potential in the ever-expanding universe of human and alien relations.